In the last video, we saw how we can use a while loop and a for loop to print a range of numbers, or print a range of numbers that have like a specified range that we specify or the user specifies. We also saw an example of how to print numbers backwards. Now what we're going to do is learn how to, instead of just printing, calculate totals. So before I do that, I want you to think, if I ask you to add all the numbers from 1 to 5, okay? Now, what are all the numbers from 1 to 5? They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In your mind, you're not going to look at 1 through 5 and say, oh, well, the sum is 15. There's no way for you to do that unless you've done it before. So how do you add 1 through 5? So the way you do it, and this is how the program would do it, is you say, okay, in my mind, I don't have anything. So the total at the beginning of time is 0. Then I'm going to look at the 1. So I have a number, let's say I. I'm going to look at this 1. When I take this 1 and I see this 1, what is the total now? Well, after I see 1, the total now becomes 1. Okay, then I see the number 2. I'm done with 1. I'm going to go to the 2. Now that I've seen 2, what is the total? Well, the total is 3. After I'm done with 2, I go and get the next number, and I see 3. What is the total now? Well, the total is 6. 3 plus 3 is 6. Then I come and I see the 4, and what's the total now? Well, 6 plus 4 is 10. Then I see the 5, and I ask myself, what is the total now? Well, 10 plus 5 is 15. And so I would say the answer is 15. Now, let's do that again with more space and kind of try to turn that into code. So initially, I'm going to start off with total equal 0, and I'm going to see some numbers one at a time. Let's call them I, like we did. And the numbers that I need to see are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are the numbers that I want to see. Every time I see an I need to update total. That number, that sum in my mind, I need to update it. How am I updating it? When I see I, I'm going to go to the total, and I'm going to say, total, you are whatever you were before, plus the I that I saw. This is the way we're going to update it. Let's try that just to see how that works. So again, the total is starting with 0. I see I is 1, so I'm going to say, okay, total is now equal to 0 plus I, which is 0 plus 1. So now my total is 1. Okay, so I'm done with that. I is going to move down and become 2. Now the total is going to be whatever it was before, the 1. I'm going to take the 1 down. I'm going to say add to it the I, which is the 2. And 1 plus 2 is 3. Now I know that 1 plus 2 is 3. Now I need to process I equal 3. So now the total is whatever it was. I'm going to take that 3 and add to it the I. And now I get 6. And I'm done with 3. Now I is 4. So my total is I'm going to take that 6 that I added already, I calculated, and add to it the I. So now my total is 10. And I'm done. Now I is 5. So I'm going to go and I say, what's my total? It's 10. I'm going to take the 10 and add to it the 5. So now my total is 15. And so this is what I'm doing. Every time I see an I see a number, I add it to the previous total that I've calculated before. So the formula that I'm using to update my totals, I'm going to say total is equal to whatever the total was before plus the I that I'm looking at. Okay, if you don't understand this part of the video, rewind and watch it again. If you do understand it, let's move on and see how can I write this in code. First, what's my starting point? Well, I have here, I'm starting off I with 1. When am I stopping? I'm stopping when I reaches 5. So let's do it with a while loop. So I'm starting with I equal to 1, and I want to continue while I is less than or equal to 5. And let's do our update as well. After I finish I equal 1, what am I going to? I'm going to 2, then 3. So I'm adding 1. So I plus equal 1. This is my update. Now, what is it that I'm doing for every single I? Okay, so do what for every I? Before we were just like printing the number or printing the square. What is it that I want to do with every I? Well, what I want to do with every I is added to the total that I have before. So what do I need to keep track of? I need to keep track of the total. Do I have a variable? I don't have a variable. I need to create a variable. So here I need to create a variable that starts off with 0, nothing. I haven't added anything. And every time I see an I need to update total. I need to say total, you are whatever you were before plus I. You could also use total plus equal I. But for now, I'm just going to spell it out so you can see what's going on. This is basically the whole code. That's it. I'm saying the first number I want to add is 1, and I'm going to go until I reach 5 in increments of 1. And for every I I'm seeing, for every number I'm seeing from 1 to 5, I want to add it to a total. So I'm going to start off a variable total with 0. And when I'm done, after the loop, I'm going to say the total is, and I'm going to print out the total. And let's see if we get 15, like we calculated ourselves. And I get that the total is 15. That's how you do it with a while loop. Now, what if I wanted to do it with a for loop? Let's think. I want to add up all the numbers in what range? I want to add up all the numbers from 1 up to 5. So I'm going to have 6 here, 6 to 5. And what is it that I want to do? I want to say total plus equal I. I want to create a variable, total. Let's call it sum this time. Sum is 0. And what I want to do is I want to say the sum, add I to it. So I'm going to add the 1, and then it's going to add the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, and it's going to stop when it reaches 6. And let's print, this time let's print sum is. And let's see if we get the 15. And we get the same answer, we get 15. So this is very popular use of while loops and for loops, where you have a range of values and you want to add them. If I wanted to add the sum of all the numbers from 10 to 20, all I would do is change this to 10 and this to 20. I would change this to 10 and this to 21. So this is a common use of for loops and while loops. Sometimes, so here I told you like when to start, when to stop. Now, sometimes we don't know the range of numbers that we want to add. So let's say, for example, I'm working with the user and they want to add up, you know, all the expenses that they have spent. Okay, so they want to add up, you know, how much money they spent. So here we're going to ask the user for how much they spent on various objects, items, and the program will print the total. Okay, well, let's ask ourselves, what is the first number I'm gonna add? So first I need a total equal to 0. What is the first number I'm gonna add? Well, I don't know. Who knows? The user knows. So I need to go to the user and ask them. So I'm gonna say, let's say price equal to, let's make it a float, input, enter, price of first item. Okay. So the user is going to see that, they're going to enter the price. When do I want to stop? Well, maybe I can do like a while. Do you want to enter another one? I could do that. But instead of doing that, what I can do is I can say, okay, I'm going to decide with the user on a value. And when I see that value, I will know that the user is done. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to append my instructions to say enter price of first item. When done, enter -1. So now what I'm telling the user to do is when you are done, user, entering values, I want you to type in a -1. So now my code can say, while the price is not -1, it's a valid price. I'm going to read it in. So now they've entered a price, 20, for example. It's not -1, so I'm going to add it to total. Total plus equal to the price. I'm adding whatever they entered. Okay, so now I did my initialization. I did my test. I did what I want to do with the price. What's left? Well, what's left is my update. How am I going to update? How am I going to get the next price? I don't know. How do I get the next price? I can't just add 1 or subtract 1. I get the next price from the user. So I have to go back to the user and ask them again. So when you're interacting with the user, sometimes your initialization and your update come from the user. Okay, so I'm going to say X item, when done, enter -1 again. Here, my initialization is coming from the user. It's not hard-coded like here. I know my starting point is 1. Where's my update? I don't know. I'm not saying go in increments of 1 or 2 or backwards. My update is coming from the user. So here, my loop is interacting with the user to get the initial value and to get the next value. So this code, we need to actually print the sum at the end. So after the loop is done, let's say you spent, and let's format the price to have 2 digits after the decimal. So I'm going to say 0.2F. So let's see how this is going to work. It says enter the price of the first item, so it's coming here, and I'm going to say 10. It reads in the 10 and it checks. Is it -1? No. It adds it to total. Oops, I saw a mistake. This should say total, not price. I'm going to print the total. So let's start all over. So here, the first price I enter is 10. It's going to take the 10, check. Is it -1? It's not. So it's going to add it to total, and then it's going to go and check the next price. So now it printed this message, enter price of next item. That's what it printed. So now I'm going to say 20, and let's say one more, 30, and I'm done. So here I spent 10, 20, 30, so I spent 60. So I'm done. I'm going to say -1, and it says you spent $60. Okay, so here is an example of how you can write code that interacts with the user if you don't know your stopping point. So we learned how to add numbers that are in a range that the user specifies by using the start and ending. And we learned how to interact with the user when they are entering a series of numbers. They don't know their starting number. They don't know their ending number. They don't even know how many items they bought. So here, this is a loop that would run until the user enters a value that the program agrees on with the user. Now, this has to be a value that's not valid. I can't say enter 100 when done. Because 100 might be a valid price. So you have to choose maybe 0 or -1. So make sure to enter, to ask for a value that is invalid. Now, let's do this again. But here, what we're going to do is we're going to ask the user for exam grades and print the total. So similar to here. But what we want to do is if the user enters a negative number, we want to keep asking them for a valid grade. Before we actually do this one, let's move on to this example. Here, what I want to do is I want to ask the user for GPA, and if they enter an invalid GPA, I keep asking them. So again, what's my starting point? Where am I going to get the first GPA from? Well, I get the first GPA from the user. So I'm going to say float input, enter GPA between 0 and 4. Okay. Now, let's say the user enters a bad number. So if they enter a bad number, the way I can check it is using an if statement. So I can say if GPA is less than 0 or the GPA is greater than 4, I'm going to print a message, invalid GPA, right? Comment out the above code so we can test this. So here I'm asking for a GPA, and if they enter a good one, oops, right? Nothing happened. If they enter a bad one, it tells them invalid and that's it. It's not giving them a chance to fix their mistake. It's not giving them a chance to try again. What I really want to do is I want to say invalid GPA, try again. Okay, when the user sees this message, what are they going to do? They're going to try again, right? So I need to come back and read it in again. So I need to kind of go and say GPA equal to float input, enter your valid GPA, for example. Okay, let's just have a print statement here that prints the GPA. Your GPA is. So now when the program runs, it's going to ask for a GPA. If I type in a bad GPA, it's going to come and say, oh, it's bad, it's invalid, try again. So I see this message and I say, oh, okay, it should have been a 3. And it says your GPA is 3. Now let's say the user, they enter a 5 and then they enter a 7. What happened? It asked them for the GPA, it read it in, that's the 5, and then it checked, nope, it's a bad grade, so it says invalid GPA, and it try again, and then the user here typed 7, and the program didn't check again. It immediately said your GPA is 7. So here I did input validation. I was trying to validate the input, but how many times did I do it? Only one time, because I have an if statement. And I can't keep putting, I can't come here and say again, if GPA is valid. I can't do that. I don't know how many times the user is gonna type it in wrong. So what I want to do really is I want to do this check many times. And we learned if we want to do a check many times, instead of using the word if, we use the word while. That's all you would do. So this code would keep asking the user as long as the GPA is less than 0 or greater than 4, it will keep asking them for a valid grade. It's not going to stop like this one. So if I enter a 5, it says invalid, 7 invalid, 9 invalid, -7 invalid, 9 invalid, until I give them the 3, then it's happy. So when you want to do input validation with a while loop, you can. Just think, at first write it with an if statement and get it to work with just an if statement. And if you got it to work with an if statement, erase the if and change it to a while. And that makes the input validation happen. Now, let's go back to this example that we were doing where we want to combine asking the user for a lot of things and input validation at the same time. So let's try writing this example together. Here we're going to ask the user for exam grades and print the total. Okay, I need a total. So I need total equal to 0. I need to ask the user for exam grades. Where am I going to get the first exam grade? From the user. So I'm going to say grade equal float input exam grade. Okay, I got their exam grade. That's my starting point. My next thing is my test. Oh my goodness, when am I going to stop? I don't know how many exam grades, so I need to agree with the user on a value. So I'll say -1. So enter exam grade, enter -1 when done. So always start by asking yourself, what is my starting point? Where am I getting the first value from? Where's it coming from? Okay, and then ask yourself the next question, the stopping. When am I going to stop? Oh, I'm going to stop when the user enters a -1. So while grade is not equal to -1, I'm going to do something. So what is the purpose of this loop? It is to add the grade to total, to give them the total at the end. So I'm going to say total plus equal to grade. Okay. Now, how do I update now? I need to update. So I have my starting coming from the user, the grade. I have my stopping. I did what I want to do in the while loop, and now I need to update my variable. How do I update? I go to the user. The user knows the next grade they want to add. I'm going to go and ask them. Enter next exam grade. And then again, enter -1 when done. Okay, and then at the end, I'm going to tell them their total. Or maybe let's do average this time. If I wanted average, what's average? So let's print total and average. So total is total. But if I wanted to print average, how do you calculate average? You guys know? Well, the average is the total divided by the count. Do I have a variable count? I don't. So that means I need to make sure that I create a variable count. And every time I see a grade, I'm going to count it. Okay, so count this grade. So after I add it to total, I'm going to count it. So let's try that. So if the user enters 10 and 20 and 30, and then -1, so their average is 30, 40, 50, 60. 60 divided by 3 is 20. So their average was 20 points. Okay, now what if the user, they enters, I got a 10, and then I got a -10, and then I got a 10. Now their total is 10, because 10 plus -10 is 0. Now, the user probably wanted to enter a 10 here, and by mistake, they entered a negative. Did I catch that? I didn't. So I need some input validation. So here, before adding the grade to total, I need to check if it's valid first. The grade is valid before adding and counting. So I need to come and say if grade is less than 0, print invalid grade, right? That's input validation. I'm making sure it's accurate. Let's try that and see what happens. So I said 10, -10. Okay, it told me invalid grade. Good. When I said 10 again, and then I say -1, I'm done. It's still counting that 10. So it's still added 10 and -10. It didn't ignore it. So, and it didn't give me a chance to kind of fix it. So I really don't want it to count it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell them, instead of an if statement, I'm going to make a while. And while the grade is less than 0, I'm going to tell them it's invalid, and I'm going to give them a chance to fix it again. So instead of using a print, I'm going to use a float input. I'm going to give them a chance to fix their grade again. So I'm going to say grade is equal to invalid grade, enter the correct grade. And so this will keep asking them for the correct grade inside. So here, this little while check, the purpose of it is validating the grade before I move on to add it to the total and count it. So here I'm using this while loop to keep asking the user for a lot of grades until they enter -1. And here I'm using this while loop to make sure every grade they entered is valid. Let's test it and see if it works. So now I say 10, and when I say -10, it says invalid. Enter the correct grade. And if I say -10, -10, again, -8, it's still asking me until I hit maybe 10, and then I enter the third 10, and now I'm done. So now my total is 30 divided by 3. It didn't count all those bad grades that I was doing, and it told me the average was 10. So this is how you can do input validation along with asking the user. So all the examples that are in the slides, we did them together on Mu. You can also go through the file when I post it on Blackboard and get the code and kind of go over it together.